Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to our English news edition coming to you from Canal Algérie. I'm your host, Maysa Doumaz. To the headlines. The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, presented his sincere condolences following the death of 3 soldiers who died on the border strip in the region of Timimoun in Borj Baji Mukhtar. A spectacular turn in the Spanish position concerning Western Sahara. Madrid expressed publicly through its Prime Minister its support for the Mahsen regime. And the Spanish political class denounces the scandalous position of its government. The denunciations are also numerous on social networks. Politicians, journalists, and members of civil society have stood out for the new Spanish position on Western Sahara. And we end our news edition with the Victory Day that was celebrated on Saturday in the Algerian Embassy in Paris. Those were today's headlines. First in our news, the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, presented on Sunday his sincere condolences to the National People's Army and to the families of the 3 soldiers who died on the border strip in the region of Timimoun, Borj Baji Mukhtar. The President of the Republic tweeted, quote, "To Allah we belong and to Him we shall return. My sincere condolences to the families of the martyrs of the national duty and to the AMP family following the death of the career 2nd Lieutenant Khalif Reda and Contract Corporal Tayyib Ilyas and Ali Abdelkader Houari, who died as martyrs while defending our national territory. Peace upon their souls." As part of the fight against terrorism and following a clash with a terrorist group on the border strip in the region of Timimoun in the operational sector of Borj Baji Mukhtar in the 6th Military Region, 3 soldiers fell on the field of honor on Sunday, March 20th, namely Career 2nd Lieutenant Khalif Reda, Contract Corporal Tayyib Ilyas, and Ali Abdelkader Houari. For his part, Major General Saeed Shingriha, Chief of Staff of the National People's Army, presented on his behalf and on behalf of the National People's Army his sincere condolences, praying to Allah the Mighty to welcome them in His vast paradise and to grant their families and loved ones the courage and strength in this difficult ordeal. And we start our news edition with the spectacular turn in the Spanish position concerning Western Sahara. Madrid expressed publicly through its Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, its support for the Mahsen regime, a very surprising position for the Algerian authorities. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced the call or the recall of the Algerian ambassador to Madrid for consultations. More details with Laetitia Sadqawi.
In a spectacular turnaround of Spain on the matter of Western Sahara, against all odds, Madrid, which until now supported the UN solution, guaranteeing the right of the Sahrawi people to self-determination, expressed publicly through its Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez its support for the Mahsen regime on the Sahrawi issue, which advocates the autonomy of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic under its sovereignty. On this unexpected turnabout, Spain sides with Morocco and thus gives in to the blackmail exercised by the Mahsen regime, which brandishes the scarecrow of the migration map, especially after the massive arrival in May 2021 of Moroccan migrants in the Spanish enclave of Ceuta, after a deliberate absence of border surveillance on the Moroccan side. For Madrid, which has chosen to re-establish its relations with the Mahsen after a diplomatic whirl of several months, the end justifies the means.
On Friday, March 18th, the Spanish government made it known that it had granted 10 years of relationship with Morocco after a crisis that lasted 4 months, and that ACT supported the possession of a referendum in Western Sahara. This statement is a break with the traditional policy of Spain on the issue of Western Sahara, a very serious break that does not have the consensus of most of the social and political forces of the country.
This is not the first time that Spain has betrayed the Sahrawi people, who have been fighting tirelessly for their independence for more than 40 years. This act is indeed perceived as a double historical betrayal towards the Sahrawi cause. After that of the 1975 agreement, on November 14th of that same year, a few months before the Spanish departure in February 1976, Spain, Morocco and Mauritania signed an agreement on the partition of the Western Sahara between the Makhzen's kingdom and Mauritania. This agreement has also been condemned by the Polisario Front, which proclaimed the creation of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic after the departure of the Spanish colonists. Considered a serious slippage, this new position of the Spanish government is in total contradiction with international legality, international law, and the free and democratic exercise by the Sahrawi people of their inalienable right to self-determination and independence, foreseen when a ceasefire was signed in 1999 but never characterized, which threatens the stability of the entire region.
Moi, je pense qu'il faut faire une distinction autour de tout ce qui s'est passé.
I think that a distinction should be made between the text of the letter from the Spanish Prime Minister to the King of Morocco. The context of the letter, in my opinion, is not as serious as the context because it is true that the letter expresses support for the Moroccan position. It is also true that the support is conditional on support for a so-called economic solution accepted by the Polisario Front because it explicitly says that it must be a mutually acceptable solution. This is not a recognition of a so-called sovereignty, but what is more serious is the context. The letter of this decision was sent to the King of Morocco with the condition of being secret. Spain betrayed Algeria, and then after, Morocco betrayed Spain by making the letter public.
Il a publié une lettre qui, à mon avis, était envoyée avec la condition d'être secrète.
The sudden turn of Pedro Sanchez could raise strong tensions in his executive with his allies of the radical left favorable to the self-determination of the Sahrawi people.
The Spanish government's new position that violates international law has been widely denounced and qualified as scandalous. The political class is outraged, to say the least, and the reactions against the statement of the head of the governments on the Western Sahara issue. من العماري.
The political class in and outside of Spain, as well as the associative movements, strongly criticized the new position expressed by the Spanish government on the Western Sahara issue and reiterated their unwavering support and the Sahrawi people's undeniable right to self-determination. This was the case for Luis Carlos, a constitutional law professor in Spain, who expressed the Spanish political class's rejection of the government's decision.
The
Spanish political class is shocked because the government's approach is contrary to the electoral program presented during the latest elections. The right and left-wing parties are also surprised and expressed the rejection of this serious decision that was not discussed. In a tweet, the Spanish Labor Minister Yolanda Diaz reaffirmed her commitment to the defense of the Sahrawi people and the resolution of the UN Security Council. For his part, Juan Sorweta expressed his disappointment at his country's new position on the Western Sahara issue and underlined Algeria's reaction that he described as important.
Je voudrais remercier l'Algérie parce qu'on attendait.
This is a humiliating decision for the Spanish people. I have received calls and messages from people across the world and even politicians who expressed their shock at the Spanish government that betrayed Western Sahara. We consider this a historic indecency on the part of the president of the Spanish government, who surrendered to the Moroccan king's blackmail and decided the Sahrawi people's fate without taking into consideration the legitimate representative of the Polisario Front. Furthermore, in France, the president of the association Les Amis de la Raste, or Friends of the Sadr, stated that she is extremely surprised and shocked. I find it outrageous that such a decision could be taken nowadays, while the Sahrawi people fought for their independence and self-determination for 45 years. I believe that this decision will not be followed up because I know the Spanish people's mobilization in support of the Sahrawi people. The Polisario Front condemns this position, which contradicts international equality and the UN's resolutions. Spain had to atone itself with its history and responsibility towards the Sahrawi people as the administering power of Western Sahara. But unfortunately, the Spanish government has gone against everything that is legitimate and logical. The Sahrawi are now living a drama provoked by Morocco. Next to the silence of the Spanish government, we want the government to have its own free and independent foreign policy that is not dictated by Rabat. Reactions continue to pour in as the Spanish people continue to express their surprise and discontentment while wondering why the Spanish government reacted this way.
The denunciations are also numerous on social networks. Politicians, journalists, and members of civil society have stood out from the new Spanish position on Western Sahara. More details with Rania Al-Bahri.
The latest decision of Spain on Western Sahara issue ignited the social networks in general and Twitter in particular. The Spanish political class as well as the civil society quickly expressed their worries and indignation, describing this decision as scandalous and against Spain's historical position and international law. In a tweet, the Spanish Minister of Labor and Social Economy renewed her support for the Sahrawi people, stressing that Spain's position on this issue must be based on a national dialogue, taking into account the right of the Sahrawi people to self-determination, which is guaranteed by international law. She opposed the decision of the Spanish Prime Minister that says the only solution to the conflict in Western Sahara is the application of international law that guarantees the freedom of the Sahrawi people to self-determination. For her part, Podemos International Affairs Secretary Edwia Villanueva said that she opposed the decision of the Spanish Prime Minister, mentioning that the only solution of the conflict in Western Sahara is the application of international law that guarantees the Sahrawi people the freedom to determine their own destiny. The General Secretary of Podemos Party and Social Rights Minister Lambelara rejected the Spanish government's decision, adding that the solution to the conflict in Western Sahara must be based on political solution in accordance with the Security Council resolutions that enshrine the right to self-determination for the Sahrawi people that Spain must respect. For her part, the journalist Maria Teresa Perez announced that it's up to Sahrawi people to decide their future and the United Nations resolutions must be respected. The leader of the leftist party, Mas Paes Eneguere Khan, criticized the change of position of the Sahrawi president. The government stressed that Spain should in no way be a prey to blackmail by the Moroccan monarchy and continue to support the just cause of the Sahrawi people.
11 Spanish parliamentary bloc are requesting the appearance of Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez to explain the change in Madrid's position on the conflict in Western Sahara. They are namely the Bledu parties, ERC, CUP, PNV, Janets Oricat, Mas Pies, Compromès, Nueva Canarias, and Coalición Canaria. The group is clearly asking Sanchez to explain his announcement about the Sahrawi file in which he expressed his support for Morocco's 2007 proposal. The Sahrawi people criticized this decision and considered it as complete violation of the international rights and resolution. More details with Rania Al-Bahri.
The Polisario Front strongly condemned Spain's position on the issue of Western Sahara, a position that contradicts international legitimacy and United Nations resolution that guarantee the right to self-determination for the Sahrawi people. The official position are in line with the vision of various Sahrawi civil society activists who strongly denounce the Madrid reversal and support the struggle of the Sahrawi people for their independence. This is not the first time that the Spanish government has betrayed Western Sahara, but despite this, the Sahrawi people still fighting relentlessly for independence. We are determined to move forward. The Spanish government renounced the principles of international legitimacy, but we won't give up. We are ready to take up arms and sacrifice our lives to liberate the Sahrawi territories. Spain is the former colonial power that has already subjected us to its tyranny. Even if the maneuvers of Al-Makhzen multiplied, the Sahrawi people are more determined than ever to continue their legitimate struggle for their independence.
Let us now have a listen to the statements made by the Polisario Front lawyer Gilles Devar and the lawyer and the historian Bernard Schmidt.
It was definitely a big surprise, since the Sahrawi situation has lasted for over 60 years. But then again, Spain is the administrating power appointed by the United Nations, who stated that it's a non-self-governing territory. Yet Spain abandoned this mandate by forging an agreement with Morocco, which is illegal. The Western Sahara issue relates to international law, and the acquisition of a territory through military force is a war crime that is defined by the status of the International Criminal Court that Spain is member of. As a result, it could be pursued as an accomplice. We have also obtained the cancellation of the fisheries agreement signed between the European Union and Morocco, since it was planning for an extension into Sahrawi zones.
The Spanish government has officially changed its position concerning this territory by declaring that this time the autonomy plan presented by the Moroccan Kingdom in 2017 constitutes the most reasonable solution for this territory's future. I would like to remind you that this new position is distorted and has no basis in law, because the Western Sahara is registered since 1963 till today on the list of the United Nations non-self-governing territories, which practically means a colonized territory. It is true that in the 26th of February 1976, the official representative of Spain has officially declared in the United Nations that Spain will no longer be present in this territory. The latter didn't become independent because it was claimed by Morocco without consulting its people, who found themselves in the Green March. The voting on the future of this territory hasn't taken place. I consider that this position isn't based on international legality, a position that considers that a proposal of autonomy presented by the colonizing country can represent an actual solution.
In Morocco, the demonstrations to denounce the social misery hasn't stopped, despite the repression and arrest by the Makhzen forces. As an example, the rumbling of the contractual teachers in Fez, who are demanding their integration into the public service. The political bureau of the Council of the Nation, chaired by Salah Goujil, president of the Council of the Nation, made a statement expressing astonishment at the surprising division recorded in Spain's position towards the Sahrawi cause and the dubious support it has shown towards a process of colonization condemned by the Charter and the international legality. The statement added that this change raises a question mark about the real intentions of this suspicious transformation, bringing to the mind similar complicit positions that occurred in 1975, in which Spain takes the full moral and historical responsibility in order to erase the dire effects of the Sahrawi people and on the regional as whole. The Council of the Nation calls for justice and wisdom, and following the instructions of the International Court of Justice, which reaffirms the fact that there is no legal way that could influence the implementation of Resolution 14 and 15 relating to the decolonization of Western Sahara, in particular the application of the right to self-determination, calling on the Spanish Parliament to preserve the honor and dignity of parliaments and revise this regrettable and unusual position regarding the Sahrawi file. The Justice Minister, keeper of the seals, presented on Sunday the bill on the organization of the High Authority of Transparency, Fight and Prevention of Corruption. A plenary session was chaired by the President of the National People's Assembly, Brahim Boughali, in the presence of Minister of Relations with the Parliament, Basma Azwar. This bill aims to set a legal mechanism to deal with corruption by initiating legal proceedings against suspects. Following the invitation of Lieutenant General Salim bin Hamad Al-Aqil Al-Nabit, the Chief of Staff of the Qatari Armed Forces, Lieutenant General Saeed Shingriha, Chief of Staff of the National People's Army, begins an official visit to Qatar on Sunday to take part in the 7th edition of the International Maritime Defense Exhibition and Conference, DMEX 2022. This visit will also allow the two parties to examine matters of common interest. The Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad Minister Ramtan Al-Amamra began a 3-day friendly and working visit on Sunday to the People's Republic of China at the invitation of his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi. The two sides discussed regional and international issues of common interest while expressing their will to further develop the relations linking the two countries. The two ministers insisted on the settlement of the Palestinian cause in accordance with the resolutions of international legality. Regarding the Western Sahara, the two parties affirmed their support and efforts to find a just solution within the framework of the international law. The Victory Day, also known as Eid al-Nasr, was also celebrated on Saturday at the Algerian Embassy in Paris. On this occasion, a conference debate on the importance of the negotiations and the Evian agreements in the process of the national liberation was held in the presence of many officials and members of our national community established abroad. The national football team coach Jamal Belmadi held a press conference on Sunday where he talked about the list of players that will participate in the playoff match for the World Cup against Cameroon. According to Belmadi, the preparations for the meeting scheduled for March 28th started a week after the last match played by our national team. That was it for our news edition. Thank you for tuning in to our program. Good night.